Important notes. This presentation is based on my knowledge and research. If there is an error, then it is mine. There are many available translations and interpretations of the Quran. They were all based on the amount of knowledge that was available at the time of the translation or interpretation. To avoid inaccurate translations and interpretations, this presentation would use the direct meaning of the original Arabic text of the Quran. This has been achieved here by using the original Arabic dictionaries at the time of the revelations of the Quranic text. Modern Arabic dictionaries were not used, because they contain meanings that may be different from the meanings at the time of the revelation of the Quran. The early Muslim scholars in the early days of Islam provided their interpretations based on the original Arabic language at the time of the revelation of the Quran. However, unlike here, their interpretations couldn't take into consideration the scientific facts that were not available then. They provided simple interpretations that would be understood to the simple Muslims at that time who had no idea about science. In the majority of cases, this effort is not needed because the Quranic text is written in a perfectly understandable Arabic language that has a direct meaning and needs no interpretations. After establishing the original Arabic meaning of the Quranic text, it had to be translated back to English here in a manner that would make the correlation between the scientific fact and the associated Quran text clear to the non-Arabic speaking people. The pioneer. The idea of examining the Quran in the light of modern knowledge was not thought of by Muslims. It wasn't until 1976 when a French medical doctor, Maurice Bucaille, published his book, The Bible, The Quran and Science, the Holy Scriptures examined in the light of modern knowledge, that the idea was adopted by modern scholars of Islam. Traditional scholars of Islam rejected the idea. They didn't want to associate the Quran with science because science could change. Modern scholars of Islam decided to follow this approach and associate the well-established science with the Quran. The Commission on Scientific Signs in the Quran and Sunnah was established. Annual conferences have been organized for new discoveries. The shape of the mountains. 1/3 of a mountain's height is above the surface of the earth. 2/3 is below the surface of the earth. All ancient books and dictionaries define mountains as either a pile of rock on the earth or a wrinkle in the earth crust. Quran is the only ancient book that defines the shape of mountains as pegs or stakes. Have we not made the earth as a bed and the mountains its pegs? The Quran 78:6-7. The function of the mountains. The theory of tectonic plates defines the role of mountains as to stabilize the earth's crust. Mountains clench the plates in the earth's crust together by extending above and beneath the earth's surface at the conjunction points of the tectonic plates. In this way, they fix the earth's crust and prevent it from drifting over the magma stratum or among its plates. Briefly, we may liken mountains to nails that keep pieces of wood together. This fixing function of the mountains is described in scientific literature by the term isostasy. Isostasy is the general equilibrium in the Earth's crust maintained by a yielding flow of rock material beneath the surface under gravitational stress. Asthenosphere is the upper layer of the Earth's mantle, below the lithosphere, in which there is relatively low resistance to plastic flow and convection is thought to occur. Where continents are thicker, as in mountain ranges, the crust sinks deeper into the mantle. Reference General Science, Carolyn Sheets, Robert Gardner, Samuel F. Howe, Allen and Bacon Incorporated Newton, Massachusetts, 1985, S305. We placed firmly embedded mountains on the earth, so it would not move under them. Quran 21:31. And he has set up on the earth mountains standing firm, otherwise it would shake with you, and rivers and roads. Quran 16:15. Other places in the Quran 13:3, 15:19, 27:61, 31:10, 41:10, 50:7, 27:77, mention the same facts. Decrease of the land. Land is decreasing due to the movements of tectonic plates. This should be what was indicated in the following two verses in the Quran. Verse 1. Don't they see that we gradually reduce the land from its outlying boundaries? Where God commands, there is none to put back his command. Quran 13:41. Second verse. Indeed, we gave the good things of this life to these men and their fathers until the period grew long for them. Don't they see our ability in reducing the land from its outlying borders? Is it then they who will win? Quran 21:44. Darkness in the oceans and seas. The darkness in deep seas and oceans is found around a depth of 200 meters and below. At this depth, there is almost no light. Below a depth of 1,000 meters, there is no light at all. Elder, Danny, and John Pernetta, 1991, Oceans, London, Mitchell, Beasley Publishers, S27. This should be what was indicated by the following verse of the Quran. Or like the darkness of a deep sea which is covered by waves above which are clouds, layers of darkness, one upon the other. If he puts out his hand, he cannot see it. Quran 24:40. The seas not mingling with one another. This property of the seas, that they come together yet do not mingle with one another at all, has only very recently been discovered by oceanographers. Because of the physical force called surface tension, the waters of neighboring seas do not mix. Caused by the difference in the density of their waters, surface tension prevents them from mingling with one another, just as if a thin wall were between them. Davis, Richard A. Jr., 1972, Principles of Oceanography, Don Mills, Ontario Addison Wesley Publishing, S92-33. There are large waves, strong currents, and tides in the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Mediterranean sea water enters the Atlantic by Gibraltar, but their temperature, salinity, and densities do not change because of the barrier that separates them. There are large waves, strong currents, and tides in the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Mediterranean sea water enters the Atlantic by Gibraltar, but their temperature, salinity, and densities do not change because of the barrier that separates them. Mention of the marine barriers in the Quran. He has let loose the two seas, converging together with a barrier between them they do not break through. Quran 55:19-20. Next. It is He who has let free the two bodies of flowing water, one palatable and sweet and the other salt and bitter. Yet has He made a barrier between them, a partition that is forbidden to be passed. Quran 25:53. Next. Who has made the earth firm to live in, made rivers in it, set thereon mountains to stabilize it, and made a separating barrier between the two bodies of flowing water? Can there be another God besides Allah? Nay, most of them know not. Quran 27:61. Breathing gets more difficult as you fly higher. As you fly higher, the air has less and less oxygen and breathing gets more difficult. You may feel that your chest is constrained. This should be what was indicated by the Quran 6:125. And those whom God wants to keep astray, He makes their breast close and constricted, as if they had to climb up to the skies. This is the penalty of those who refuse to believe. The region that controls our movements. The motivation and the foresight to plan and initiate movements occur in the anterior portion of the frontal lobes, the prefrontal area. This is a region of association cortex. Seeley Rod R., Trent D. Stevens, and Philip Tate, 1996, Essentials of Anatomy and Physiology, 2nd edition, St. Louis, Mosby Year Book Incorporated, S211, semicolon. Novak Charles R. N. L. Struminger and R. J. Demarest, 1991. The Human Nervous System. Introduction and Review. 4th edition, Philadelphia. The gender of the baby is determined by the male. Until fairly recently, it was thought that a baby's gender was determined by the mother's cells. Or at least it was believed that the gender was determined by the male and female cells together. The Quran is the only ancient book that indicated that gender is determined by the sperms. He has created both genders, male and female, from a drop of a sperm which has been ejected. Quran 53:45-46. Order of Formation of the Human Body. Professor Moore is the author of the book entitled The Developing Human. He is Professor Emeritus of Anatomy and Cell Biology at the University of Toronto, Canada, where he was Associate Dean of Basic Sciences at the Faculty of Medicine and the Chairman of the Department of Anatomy. He is the J.C.B. Grant Award from the Canadian Association of Anatomists. Embryology is the branch of science that studies the development of the embryo in the mother's womb. Until very recently, embryologists assumed that the bones and muscles in an embryo developed at the same time. Recent research provided that during the 7th week, the skeletons begin to spread throughout the body and the bones take their familiar shapes. At the end of the 7th week and during the 8th week, the muscles take their positions around the bone forms. Moore, Developing Human, 6th edition, 1998. Stages of baby formation from the Quran. We did create the human from a clay product. Then we placed a drop of sperm, nutfah, in a place firmly fixed. Then we made the sperm into a leech structure, alaqa. Then of that leech we made a chewed-like structure. Then we made out of that chewed-like structure bones and clothed the bones with flesh. Then we developed out of it another form of creation. Quran 23:12-14. These verses from the Quran identify the stages of prenatal development as follows. Verse 1, nutfah, which means a drop or a small amount of water. Verse 2, alaqa, which means a leech-like structure. 3, mudghah, which means a chewed-like structure. 4, izam, which means bones or skeleton. 5, kasawna ul izam bil laham, which means the clothing of bones with flesh or muscle. 6, al-nasha, which means the formation of distinct fetus. In this diagram, notice the distinction between the photograph of the chewed-up piece of gum and the chewed-like structure of the embryo. In the next picture, notice the distinction between A, the human embryo, and B, a leech. Expanding universe. Until the dawn of the 20th century, the only view prevailing in the world of science was that the universe has a constant nature and it has existed since infinite time. The research, observations, and calculations carried out by means of modern technology, however, have revealed that the universe in fact had a beginning and that it constantly expands. This should be what was indicated in the Quran 51:47. And it is we who have constructed the heaven with might, and verily, it is we who are steadily expanding it. 3 veils of darkness. The process of fertilization is artificially achieved by extracting eggs, retrieving a sperm, and then manually combining an egg and sperm in a laboratory dish. The embryo is then transferred to the uterus. It wasn't until the 1970s, when the process of tube babies started, that scientists discovered that if fertilization took place in light, the process fails. It has to be done in complete darkness. This should be what was indicated by the Quran 39:6. Allah created you in the womb of your mothers, one form of creation after another, in 3 veils of darkness. The 3 layers are understood as the abdominal wall, the uterine wall, and the membranes. Iron did not form in our solar system. Modern astronomical findings have disclosed that the iron found in our world has come from the giant stars in outer space. The heavy metals in the universe are produced in the nuclei of big stars. Our solar system, however, doesn't possess a suitable structure for producing iron on its own. Iron can only be produced in much bigger stars than the Sun, where the temperature reaches a few 100 million degrees. When the amount of iron exceeds a certain level in a star, the star can no longer accommodate it, and eventually explodes in what is called a nova or a supernova. As a result of this explosion, meteors containing iron are scattered around the universe, and they move through the void until attracted by the gravitational force of a celestial body. Iron came from giant stars in outer space. This should be what was indicated by the Quran 57:25. And we sent down iron in which there lies great force, and which has many uses for mankind. Usually, the Quran uses the word created to refer to things created by God. This expression, sent down, is mentioned in the Quran only in relation to sending down rain, Adam and Eve, Iblis, Lucifer, animals, rocks to punish people, such as the city of Sodom, scriptures, light, and guidance. The word created should have been used with iron because there is no expectation that iron would be sent from heaven. Yet the expression sent down was used with iron. This was intended to indicate that iron came from outer space and was not made on earth. Early scholars of Islam interpreted sent down to mean created. This is expected because they did not know any better at that time. Position of stars. Because stars are many millions of light years away from us, we do not see the actual star, but see the position of the star millions of years ago. Sometimes the star no longer exists, but we still see the light coming from it. Because the sun is 8.33 light minutes away, we actually don't see the sun itself. We see the position of the sun 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. This might be what was indicated by the Quran 56:75. I swear by the positions of stars. It indicated this fact because it did not refer to the stars themselves, for many of them no longer exist, and what we see is just their positions. The sun has its own light, but not the moon. The sun has its own light, but the moon doesn't. This is indicated by the following verses in the Quran. Verse 1. And see how he has made the moon a light and the sun a lamp. Quran 10:5. Verse 2. Blessed is he who has placed in the heavens great stars, and placed therein a great lamp and a moon giving light. Quran 25:61. Verse 3. It is he who made the sun a light-giving object and the moon a light. Quran 71:16. What is the pulsar and what makes it pulse? Pulsars are rotating neutron stars observed to have pulses of radiation at very regular intervals that typically range from milliseconds to seconds. Pulsars have very strong magnetic fields, which funnel jets of particles out along the two magnetic poles. These accelerated particles produce very powerful beams of light. It resembles a lighthouse. Was the existence of the pulsar indicated in the Quran? Quran 86:1-3 says, by the skies and the Tariq. Do you know what is the Tariq? It is the Thaqib star. If the output of the radio telescope is connected to a speaker, the sound resembles the knocking sound at steady rate. This resembles the meaning of the word Tariq, which means the knocker. Thaqib means shining bright or penetrating. This description should resemble the pulsar because it produces very powerful beams of light. The funnel jet of particles producing the light can penetrate anything. Thaqib star also means the star with a hole. It might be referring to the black hole as well. It should be noted that when a pulsar dies, it becomes a black hole. Fire at the bottom of the ocean. This image is for multi-beam sonar waves, reflecting off the seafloor near the French island of Mayotte, reveal the outline of an 800-meter tall volcano, red, and a rising gas-rich plume. And by the Mustjor Ocean, Quran 52:6, and when the ocean Sojarat, Quran 81:6. The words Mustjor and Sojarat have three meanings: filled, overflowing, or flamed. All three meanings are relevant, but the third meaning is the intended one, because the verse 81:6 is one of 13 verses, 81:1-13, describing the horrors of the Day of Judgment that will include fire coming out of the oceans. The Prophet Muhammad said that under the ocean is fire, and under the fire is ocean, and under the ocean is fire. This saying of the Prophet Hadith authenticity is questionable, but when combined with the two verses from the Quran, it appears to be authentic. The two verses and the Hadith combined indicate that the ocean has fire below it, and under this fire is ocean, and under this ocean is fire. Restoring the food from the fly. Flies vomit their stomach contents on solid food. Digestive juices from the stomach start breaking the solid food into small pieces. Mixed with the stomach juices and other stuff in its stomach, the fly can now use its proboscis to drink the liquid. No one can restore the food of the fly before or after it drinks it. This should be what was indicated in Quran 22:73. O people, here is a given example, so listen to it. Those whom you pray to besides God, false gods, cannot create a fly, even if they all gathered together for this purpose. And even if the fly would snatch away anything from their food, they would not be able to restore it. How weak is the one who prays and the one who prayed to false gods. It should also be noted that no one can create a fly because only God can create life. Saying of the Prophet regarding the fly falling into a drinking container. Only in modern times was it covered that the common fly carried parasitic pathogens for many diseases, including malaria, typhoid fever, cholera, and others. It was also discovered that the fly carried parasitic bacteriophagic fungi capable of fighting the germs of all these diseases. This should be what was indicated by the saying, hadith, of the Prophet Muhammad that states, "If a fly falls into one of your containers, immerse it completely before removing it, for under one of its wings there is disease, and under the other one there is its cure." Will the Day of Judgment happen at nighttime or at daytime? Due to time difference, the happening of the Day of Judgment should be nighttime on one side of the globe and daytime on the other side. If a statement in the Quran would indicate that the Day of Judgment is going to start specifically at nighttime or specifically at daytime, then it would be technically wrong. The following verse in the Quran, 10:24, indicates that the Day of Judgment will either happen at daytime or at nighttime, depending on the earth's position. Verily, the likeness of this worldly life is as the water, rain, which we send down from the sky. So by it arises the intermingled produce of the earth, of which men and cattle eat, until when the earth is clad in its adornments and is beautified, and its people think that they have all the powers of disposal over it. Our command, the Day of Judgment, reaches by it night or by day, and we make it like a clean mown harvest, as if it had not flourished yesterday. Thus do we explain the ayat, signs, in detail for the people who reflect.